Hi, this is Jesse with Camp Perspective, and we're back with a new off-leash dog attack analysis video. This one's coming out of St. Petersburg, and it's a gentleman just walking outside, I guess, to take his dog to potty, maybe take his dog out for a walk. As soon as he walks out his front door, neighbor across the street is walking their dog. Dog happens to get loose and charges straight for his dog, and then it's a short little kind of 15-second scuffle. I'm going to be doing this with the screen recording, so I can use my arrow to kind of point things out, and I'll make commentary on the obvious, what I liked that the gentleman did, what I didn't like, and then because I don't have super fancy Final Cut editing skills, I'm going to use my arrow to kind of point things out. But first I'm going to let you guys see the clip uninterrupted. So there's a kid running with a dog. Dog's loose. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi. 2 seconds, dog attack. This is ridiculous. All right, so very quick clip. So the obvious, right? So it's a grandparent, I think it was a grandmother with her grandchildren. They're walking 2 dogs. She has one. The oldest of the 2 children or grandchildren has the other. So the obvious is very large, probably 60-pound pit being walked by what looked like to be a 10 to 12-year-old child around that age frame on a harness, 40 to 50 feet apart from where the grandmother was and where the child was. There's a lot of distance there between them. And I'm not sure if the child was running or if the dog was just pulling so hard that the kid had no choice but to go. So the obvious is, kids that small should not be in control of a dog that size, okay? Especially on a harness. The harness is meant to pull. The harness works in the dog's favor. Our center of gravity is at our hips. So as soon as that dog goes, boom, you go with them. And obviously that's how the dog got off leash. Very quick, and it was a very quick approach. It was about 2 seconds before the dog got from where it was, and it was about 50 feet, 60 feet to where it got to the chocolate lab. Okay, so that child should have not been in control of that dog, for one. I'm not a big fan of kids being in control of dogs personally. I understand if it's like maybe got a little like Yorkie or something, like a little 8 to 10 pounder. Physically, like that's fine, but then you want to think on behalf of the child. Children are typically unassuming. They're not thinking about like all the things that could potentially happen within the world, and are not prepared, to handle a situation like this. So that's the most obvious thing, is that child should not have been in control of this dog, and that child should have not have been responsible for actually pulling that dog away. In that moment, like that dog could have easily redirected, but that's just how the video played out. So we'll go ahead and play this so I can kind of go over what I liked that the gentleman did and what I would have done differently. So here's a child running or being pulled by the dog. Gentleman comes out, catches sight, and right there, kid trips as the dog pulls to the side, and then you can see that this is, I believe, the second child. Yeah, so that's actually greater. It's probably like a 60 to 80 foot gap between the first child with the dog and where the grandparent is. That's a huge gap. The child should have been right with the grandparent. It is what it is. So now the dog is caught sight, and we can see the chocolate lab is also caught sight of that threat as well. The tail's gone up, shoulders are dipping down, looking, kind of scouting like what's going on here. Yep, then it sees the threat coming across. It's about half a second in. Dog scouts it, pulls up, postures in alert state, and the owner's going, uh-oh, I see it too, right? So here, the dog is already perceiving threat, and this is why we always teach our clients to perceive threat if approached by an off-leash dog. So even if the other approaching dog is friendly, you got to understand that dogs live in a black and white world. They don't understand like, oh, that's just a neighbor's dog that got off leash like you would. They just go dog off leash charging towards me. threat, right? Now, if your dog is friendly, when the two meet, most likely, like you'll usually see a moment of tension where they posture and they'll like shoulder up to each other, and then it resolves into play, and then they're fine or whatever, right? But that tension is because of, are you friend or foe? It's a real quick kind of moment where the dog's perceiving threat, but they resolve it because both dogs are non-threatening, they're both friendly, and whatever, they play in frolic or whatever. But most dogs will anticipate threat. So if you have a dog that's more unsure, they're going to think threat, and then they may aggress and become defensive because it's kill or be killed in the animal world. So here, the dog's posturing, tail's up, it's getting ready. A gentleman, and I'm going to point out something that I liked here is he immediately chokes up on the leash. Let me see if I get her right there. He immediately pulls in and chokes up on that leash, okay? And this is something that I teach my clients that have reactive dogs, is to always get used to choking up on that leash, getting close to that collar, okay? The reason is you get much more control, and you get immediate control or leverage over your dog, okay? The more slack there is in that leash, the more leverage your dog has over you. Again, our center of gravity is at our hips, so if your dog pulls, you're going to go down with your dog. Because of the pressure being put on your shoulders, bringing you down. So I like that he choked up on that leash, okay? So I'm thinking his thought process was choke up, whip my dog around, and body block, okay? Because in the video, how he moves, it looks like that's what he was trying to do, but the dog was already there. So he didn't have that ability to put himself in between as a buffer. So if I'm teaching a client that has a reactive dog, or we think reactivity may happen, I'll tell them step aside on the sidewalk. They'll choke up on that leash, not tight. They're not tight. It's short, but if the dog, lunges, it's only got a foot of slack. It's not going to get very far. Plus, if the owner needs to, as soon as they pull up, they're going to have that immediate leverage, and they're not going to be all the way up here while their dog's lunging and pulling them all over the place. You have that immediate control, so you're able to get more from more control from less leash, essentially. And that's the biggest thing that people do, is they give the dog too much slack. Then when something happens, they're leaving the slack as opposed to just trying to reel them in so they can right away just use power to move them, okay? So I like that he did that. In this scenario, I personally would have not done this. And I'll explain after I let this play out a bit. So he chokes up on the leash. He tries to whip the dog around. Now the threat's already there. And that was within a span of about 2 seconds, okay? Okay, so right here, see if I can catch it. Right there. That was just a second before. So right here, he's trying to pull his dog back, right? It's an attack, right? Like, I understand he's trying to disengage the fight, but in my opinion, if an off-leash dog attacks my dog, and he has a sizable dog, he has, about a 70 to 85-ish pound chocolate lab. It's a pretty solid dog. It can defend itself against this attack, okay? But he's probably going to we don't want a dog fight, but the dog fight's already there. So what I would do is I would let the leash go. His dog's not in flight mode. His dog's in fight mode. So dogs have 4 responses: fight, flight, avoid, and submission. Had his dog went like this to the other end of the leash when the dog approached, that's flight mode. He lets the leash go, his dog is gone. Okay, that I can understand. So it's really the choice of, do I let my dog run away into safety or get the safety, or do I risk letting that leash go, or do I let my leash go and let my dog fight, right? So in this case, the dog was in fight mode. Should he have let that leash go? The dog's not going anywhere. Dog's engaged. Dog's ready to defend itself. Okay, so I would have let the leash go, let my dog defend itself, and then help my dog. Come around the attacking dog. Here it's looks like a 60 to 70 pound pit. Grab the hind legs. Maybe the dog gets distracted because I grabbed his hind legs. Its center of balance is now off. Dog turns around. I can now whip that dog out. Put my foot out to disengage my dog. Keep my dog back. Owner comes, gets their dog. Whatever, right? Or pick the dog's feet up. Both dogs are still engaged. Doesn't matter. My responsibility is to protect my dog. Their safety is my responsibility. If they're engaged, then I'm delivering kicks to the stomach of the attacking dog, getting them to disengage. As soon as I get them to whoop and yelp or whatever and go back off of my dog, I whip them around, and then again, disengage by putting my foot out towards my dog to say like, all right, I've disengaged the threat, you need to keep back, okay? Because the dog's most likely going to keep with it and then swing the dog out. As long as I had those hind legs, the dog cannot get to me, and there's no way it can direct its body because it needs all 4 legs in order to really maneuver itself, okay? So I would have let the leash go, let my dog protect itself because it was actively trying to. I saw some pretty good snaps coming from the chocolate lab, but instead with the gentleman pulling his dog back and stuff, you'll see the pit got quite a few good chomps. So I think it was on the neck and then like in the butt, tail, rear end or hind leg area. Again, pulling his dog back. His dog's ready. His dog's willing to defend itself. Again, just trying to get in the way. Like, just let that leash go. Because the other thing is, in that franticness, with you just like doing all this hand stuff, even your own dog will bite you because it doesn't know what's coming from where. Okay, so it might think that the touch on the side of the shoulder might have been the other dog, whips around, next thing you know, you just got a chomp on the hand. So a little bit too much touching. So let's see what happened. Looked like the dog retreated for a quick moment. Yeah, so, you know, this lab is doing a pretty good job of like putting on some bites to like get the dog to like back away and stuff. So, you know, now we got the child has now entered the picture, coming around. Again, looks like a 10 to 12-year-old child. We had the other child, which seems smaller, looks like a 6 to 8-year-old child. And then the grandma with the other dog, just again, like 100 feet away, across the street, right? Way too far away, not really assessing what's going on in the situation. So here, this child should have not been responsible for disengaging this dog. You know, thankfully, the child was able to remove the dog. But one thing that we're going to see here, the guy gives the dog a good whack. And this is what I like here. There's a good chomp on the pit, from the pit to the chocolate lab. Is this, again, the pit is on a harness and a flat collar, okay? And the guy's trying to move his dog back and keep the dog at bay, and he's trying to grab something, and I can see where he's really trying to, at this point, disengage the fight. Again, his hand, danger zone, because he's right next to that mouth, and he's coming in from here, so the dog, he's in the dog's peripheral, as opposed to if someone just grabbed the dog from the back of the collar. But in this case, I, if possible, would have gotten the flat collar and then twisted to tighten up the collar to start cutting off airflow, and then just choke the dog out. Okay, choke the dog till it passes out, whatever, and then you got to disengage your dog. He already choked up on the leash, so that's good. So now if I have to keep my dog away while I have this dog here, that's like a better setup. The only thing I would be concerned with is because this dog is so agitated, when he goes to twist it, the dog is now in front of him, that the mouth is right here, that the dog decided to bite, he's going to get his forearm right there, okay? So, again, had he let the leash go, he could have came from behind, grabbed the hind legs, or even gotten that flat collar and twisted it, but now the dog's head would be over here. So the dog's got to twist in order to try to bite the hand. He's right behind it, right behind the head, center of the head, choking the dog out while he can help disengage his other dog. It would have been a much better setup. I think it would have been safer. You know, these are things you have to think about prior to a dog attack. A lot of people just, you know, of course, they rescue a dog and they think life's going to be perfect with that dog, and that's not the case. You may, and I hope you don't, but you may come across a scenario like this. So you want to already know in your head, if a dog attacks me or my dog, am I going to let the leash go, or am I going, or am I going to try to disengage the fight? You want to know what your approach is going to be prior to the scenario ever happening, because once the scenario happens, since you've already made that subconscious decision, you're just going to kick into action, and you're going to start maneuvering, you're going to start doing things, you're going to start being proactive as opposed to reactive. So this man was, of course, reactive. I get it. Not planning for an off-leash dog to attack your dog as you walk your dog out the front of your door. But these are things that I've told clients, like, you want to have this decision already made so that if you see the scenario about to happen, you're already kicking into gear, you're already being proactive, and ideally disengaging the fight before anything happens, okay? Gentleman didn't have enough time to get the dog behind him. If that was the case, you could have whipped the dog behind him, stuck his foot out to slow down the other dog, because when a dog is charging, when they see a foot, it'll like kind of deter them for a bit, but then I'd expect the dog might redirect and then come for the foot. Or if they try to move forward, you'd have to deliver kicks to the chest to get the dog to move back, and I mean very firm kicks. This dog clearly has intent to do harm. You have to perceive threat, in my personal opinion, whenever you have an off-leash dog, because you do not know what's going to happen when both dogs meet, okay, because it might become worse. A couple of kicks to the chest is going to be a lot better than a vet bill, a bunch of puncture wounds, sutures, and drains for infections and stuff like that. So that's what I've done. I would have done, let the dog go, or grab the hind legs, grab the collar, choke the dog out. Here he gets the harness. He starts to move the dog back. His dog is now already, I think, in retreat mode, the way it's like laying down now. I think the dog got maybe a couple of bites on him. The dog doesn't want to fight anymore because the guy kept inhibiting. The guy kept getting in the way. Now we see the child come in, which again shouldn't have been on this child. Very dangerous position right there. Very dangerous position. I get it, So right here, that dog, full striking range for the owner. Now, typically, dog will stay engaged on the target, in this case, the chocolate lab. But should they disengage, or should something else get their attention, they're going to go for the next or the nearest thing. And in this case, it would have been the gentleman's arm. Okay, gets the dog back. Kid sees its opportunity. I will say, as much as the kid shouldn't have been the one to handle the situation, maybe the gentleman was giving direction to the child, but waited for the opportunity before stepping in and getting both hands on that harness. So that was, the approach wasn't great, but it was timed correctly. That I liked how that was handled. Again, like the other child and the grandparent way back here, and what's going on? Like really, make your way to the situation. Like help. Your dog is off the leash and attacking. Okay, so dog's still fighting against the child and the man. Right, so that's where the choke out would have been. Yeah, and again, like the other child, it's just ridiculous, right? Completely unassuming, that has no idea what's going on, and these people, this family should not be in the possession of such a powerful breed. I believe the other dog is also a pit. I was reading the news article, so craziness, but. This is why, again, I recommend everybody, when an off-leash dog is charging you, assume threat. You want to know what your decision is going to be. Are you going to protect your dog? Are you going to try to retreat? There is no right or wrong in my book. Do what you think is best for you, best suited for you. If you got a Chihuahua, clearly a Chihuahua would not have been able to defend from a dog like this, right? I get that. But if your decision is, I'm going to pick up my Chihuahua like this to defend it, then you better be prepared to get bit, because that dog's now going to jump up to get to the Chihuahua, and your arms are now in the way, okay? And if that's your decision, that's perfectly fine, but you have to commit, or you have to know what's going to happen next. So if I do this, my legs are coming out, and I'm kicking because I'm going to defend myself and I'm going to protect my dog. If you're close to something like a car, jumping up on a car, also very wise, if you don't want to confront the situation. This was a 60 to 70 pound pit, in my opinion, a dog that you can fight off. If it was like 130 pound, kind of Corso Rottweiler, totally different conversation, right? Like the same approach isn't going to work for every dog. I would not probably confront a dog of that size physically in this kind of scenario, but I would most likely do the coming around, grabbing the hind legs, because again, if you have the hind legs, the dog cannot get you, and the dog has less kind of maneuverability to really direct its power and push into things and stuff like that, okay? So that was this video. Hope you pulled out some good info. Again, please be responsible. Harnesses are not good for walking dogs. They give the dog much more pulling power and leverage over you as the handler. you want, train your dog. In my opinion, off-leash train your dog. Do not have your dog in the possession of a child, especially a dog of this size. Always be near your child and the dog as an adult. That you're the responsible one. You're the one that's supposed to have the common sense not to do these things. I'll put a link to the news broadcast on this, as there was actually a whole spiel behind this and these particular dogs and attacking another dog in the neighborhood, things like that, number of complaints. So I'll attach the news article and also attach the video as well. And again, I hope you learned something from this. I'm just your canine perspective. Thank you for watching.